So, good evening, guys. Today we are going to discuss right to protest and restrictions imposed, and then we are going to discuss the events of Shaheen Bagh, and then after that we will discuss what is democracy and the concept of dissent. Am I audible to all of you?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
okay. So, the first and foremost, most important thing, why there is protest. So everybody know that uh, m- government comes with the policies because it's the work of the government to make policy to pass certain laws. And many times what happens, the general public doesn't general public is not satisfied with some provisions of the law, or most of the time is not satisfied with full law. Then what the public do? Public will protest so that government will become aware of the thing that the public is protesting because they are not satisfied by the policies which government has made. Okay. After that, so public they people make a group and they stand together. They, because they think they claim they have got the human right to protest, and they start protesting if they are not satisfied by a particular bill or by a particular policy or by any law made by the government. Then, so the people have got the freedom and the right to protest under the article 19. So article 19 one clause a states that there is a freedom of speech and expression. Now, Article 19, 1 clause B states that people have right, no, the citizens of India has right to protest peacefully and without arms. Article 19, 1 clause C states that people, that is citizen of India, has right to form associations and trade unions. It's very important to note that all of these three rights are only given to citizens of India, not to any other people, only to citizens of India. Now, moving on to next slide. So, as these are the fundamental rights, that is 19.1a, 19.1b, and 19.1 clause C, these are the fundamental rights. So it is the duty of the government to protect, encourage, and respect these rights. Means it's the duty of the government in the democracy, and India is a democratic nation. So it is the duty of the government to protect, encourage, and respect the right of protest of each and every protester. Okay, till now is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, so as we know that is the duty of the government to protect, encourage, and respect the right of the protesters, as they have got the fundamental right of protest, which the Constitution, which is the mother law, and the Constitution mother law gives the protesters the right to protest. So government has a duty, and it's a binding duty on the government to protect, encourage, and respect the right of protest. Then, but but the right of protest is subject to certain restrictions. Um, so the restrictions on Article 19, by which the people get the right to protest, are the sovereignty, integrity, security, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency and morality, defamation, incitement of an offense, and contempt of justice. If we are going to hamper these all points, then the government can apply these restrictions on Article 19 and government can stop the protest. So we will discuss each of the point. First point is sovereignty. So sovereignty is the right and ability of a government to rule, that is, to make laws and enforce those laws without interference and or without requesting the approval consent of an outside body. Let's take an example. If India is making a law, passing a bill about any particular issue, then the India doesn't has to take consent of China or of America or of Pakistan or of any other country, because India is a sovereign country. India is an independent country, so India doesn't have to take consent from any of the country to pass a law. That's what sovereignty means. Now coming to the second point, which is integrity. Integrity. Many people think that integrity and sovereignty is same, but integrity and sovereignty is different. As we know what sovereignty is. Now coming to the integrity. Integrity is about the territorial integrity. Territorial integrity is the right and ability of a state to control its borders and prevent occupation, annexation, or incursion by neighboring country or the separation, cessation of states within its border. So the territorial limits and the borderly limits of a country is its integrity, and until and unless the protests are affecting the integrity of the nation, they can't be stopped. Third point is of security, like it's the same like border security and security of armed forces and security of the nation. Then coming to the fourth point, friendly relations with the foreign states. So if the protests are hampering the friendly relation, if suppose we have the friendly relation with China, and China is also following the same friendly relation with us, and if there is any protest going on in India, by which government of India think that this protest can hamper the friendly relation between India and China, then the government of India has its full right to suppress that protest, to stop that protest, because it will affect the friendly relation with the foreign states, and that's one of the restrictions which can be imposed on Article 19. Now, fifth point is of public order. So, coming on to public order is it means that order should be maintained on public roads and in public places. Until and unless public order is not getting hampered, every protester has the right to protest. Now, decency and morality. Decency and morality are just the common term. Decency is being decent, and morality is the meaning of decency when it gets accepted by the society. Now, coming to the next point, which is defamation. So, defamation is the action of damaging the good reputation of someone, either by slander or by libel. So, defamation can be from two types, either by speaking or by writing. And there one more type, that's by the signs. You can defame someone by the means of signs. Then coming to the second last point, which is incitement of an offense. So incitement of an offense means the encouragement of another person to commit a crime. uh, Next point is contempt of court. So contempt of court, we can say that it's an act of deliberate disobedience or disregard for the laws, regulations, or decorum of a public authority, such as court or legislative body. So these are all the restrictions which are on the Article 19. And if any of the restrictions get applied on the Article 19, then government has all the power to suppress that protest if if the protest is affecting the sovereignty, integrity, security, and the friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency and morality, defamation, and incitement. If it's having the incitement of an offense, or it's against the code, means if it's if the protests are in violation of the code, then government then government has all the right to suppress that protest. Okay, till now is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now moving on to the Shaheen Bagh. So we all know what happened in Shaheen Bagh. Many of us have watched the television, the news. So now coming on the serial of events, what happened? So as we all know that the events started after the passing of Citizenship Amendment Act 2019, and the act was passed last year, which seeks to grant citizenship to non-Muslim migrants belonging to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Christian, Jain, and Parsi communities who came to the country from Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan on or before December 31, 2014. It's very important to note the religions which are mentioned in the Citizenship Amendment Act and the countries which are mentioned in the Citizenship Amendment Act. So the religions are Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Christian, Jain, and Parsi, and the countries Pakistan, Bangladesh,
Sir, your voice is breaking.
Afghanistan. So what happened after the passage of Citizenship Amendment Act, nationwide protests started. Okay. Yeah, am I audible now? Is it clear? Am I audible?
Yes, this is better. Go on.
Yeah, yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. So
Sir, I have one doubt.
yeah, is there any question?
Yes, sir, I just have one doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
In like when I read the Citizenship Amendment Act, it actually doesn't mention non-Muslim. Like it just mentions Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, etc. But it doesn't say like that it should be non-Muslim.
Okay, so that's why I have not just reiterated what is written in Citizenship Amendment Act. That is the summary part. That it's very clear that if you are granting the citizenship to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Christian, Jain, and Parsi communities, then it only means that you are not granting citizenship to non-Muslim migrants. Okay, because these religions are non-Muslim, non-Islamic.
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we
Okay,
move
sir.
further? Okay, yeah. So after the passage of Citizenship Amendment Act, nationwide protests started. So, and in Delhi, what happened? A woman-led protest, which is 24/7 and is a sit-in protest, started at Shaheen Bagh in Delhi. Then, then the Shaheen Bagh protest resulted in the closure of Kalindi Kunj Shaheen Bagh stretch, including the Okhla underpass from 15th December 2019. So the blockage is there. The protesting people has blocked the road and the one underpass, which is Okhla underpass. Then it was submitted that the public roads could not be permitted to be encroached upon in this manner, and thus a direction should be issued to clear the same. Now it's the duty of administrative bodies to issue a direction and to check what's happening there. What's the kind of encroachment is there, and to remove that encroachment, to unblock the Okhla underpass and to open the Shaheen Bagh stretch. But when the law enforcement authorities were controlling the protest and traffic, the Supreme Court opted for an out-of-box solution and appointed senior advocate Sanjay R. Hegde and mediator trainer Sadhana Ramachandran as interlocutors. Then the interlocutors made appreciable force and submitted a report on 24 to 2020, which highlighted that the nature of demands was very wide. So what these interlocutors did, they went to that particular Shaheen Bagh stretch and Okhla underpass, and they talked to the protesters. And then they, after talking to them, they wanted to have a solution of that protest, because they are sitting from a number of days and they are not moving from that place, and that's causing problems to daily commuters. So after studying the whole problem, they submitted a report on 24th of February 2020, which highlighted that the nature of demands was very wide. The nature of demands of the protesters was very wide, and that it did look difficult to find a middle path towards at least facilitating the opening of the blocked public way. Then the interlocutors did their best, but their efforts could not fructify into success. Although the number of people at protest site has eventually diminished, but then also blockage was there. Then after some time, the interlocutors also published the second report, and that has some significant point which became a part of the judgment of the Supreme Court also, and which became very important for Supreme Court for passing the judgment on the Shaheen Bagh. So the second report has 4 points which mentions that the views reflected in private conversations with the protesters were somewhat different from the public statements made to the media and to the protesting crowd in attendance. This is clearly mentioned in the report, that whatever protesters has told them, the conditions which protesters has told to the interlocutors, is not the same whatever the protesters has told to the media. So there's a difference between those two demands. Now, second point is that while the women protesters had sat in protest inside the tent, there was a huge periphery comprising mainly of male protesters, volunteers, and bystanders, who all seemed to have a stake, in the continuance of the blockade of the road. So, as we all know, the protest of Shaheen Bagh started with a woman-led protest. It was a woman-led 24/7 sit-in protest. So by sit-in protest, anybody don't have any problem. But what happened after some time, male protesters, volunteers, and bystanders also joined in the protest with their own motives. They have their own stakes in the protest, and they have the main role in the blockade of the road. Now the third point, it appeared to the committee that there's an absence of leadership at the protest, because initially the protest, when protest started, it was a women-led protest. It was a protest where there were less number of people, less number of women. So there have been one leadership, but now there are different groups coming to protest. comprising of male members, volunteers, and bystanders. So they have their own groups, they have their own leaders. So committee stated that it appeared that an absence of leadership guiding the protest and the presence of various groups of protesters had resulted in many influencers who were acting possibly at cross purposes with each other. So that's the main reason why the interlocutors are not coming to a particular solution, because each of the group has their own demand, because there are many of the group and they have their own demand. So that's why it's become a problematic for the interlocutors to come to a particular situation. Now, coming to the fourth and last point, thus the finally it was stated in the report that thus the Shaheen Bagh protest perhaps no longer remained the sole and empowering voice of women, who also appeared to no longer have the ability to call off the protest themselves. Means now the protest is not in the hand of those women who started the protest, and so the whole purpose of the protest got defeated. Means the initial purpose of the protest was no longer there. So committee stated that there was also the possibility of the protesters not fully realizing the ramifications of the pandemic, as that time pandemic was going on, and the coupled with a general unwillingness to relocate to another site. So the one more important thing there is that committee, that is the comprising of two interlocutors, also provided the group with the option of relocating to another site, so that the Okla underpass and the Shaheen Bagh, that road gets free, and as it was blocked, but the protesters were not ready and are unwilling, and showing their unwillingness to relocate to another site. Is this clear till now, the events of Shaheen Bagh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now, as the CA protests were going on, there was a case registered in the Supreme Court, which is Amish Shahani versus Commissioner of Police. Then let's see what happened in this case. So Supreme Court has decided something very significant on the right of protesters in this case. So it's a three-judge bench of SK Kaul, Aniruddha Bose, and Krishna Murari, and they held the matter of Shaheen Bagh protest. Firstly, they noticed something which is very relevant. They noticed that the constitutional scheme comes with the right to protest and express dissent, but with an obligation towards certain duties also. So, Article 9 is one of the cornerstones of the Constitution of India and confers upon its citizens. Remember this point, this is only for citizens. So, it confers upon its citizens two treasured right. We only need two. So, that's why we are discussing two here. So, first is the right to freedom of speech and expression under Article 19(1) subclause A. Second is the right to assemble peacefully without arms under Article 19 clause 1 subclause B. Then, after noticing this, Supreme Court stated that these rights provided in 19 clause 1 subclause A and subclause B in cohesion, these rights in cohesion enable every citizen to assemble peacefully and protest against the actions or inactions of the state. And the same must be respected and encouraged by the state, as we have already discussed that these rights must be respected and encouraged by the state, because these are provided by the mother law, which is constitution, and these are the fundamental rights. So it's binding duty on the state to respect and encourage and promote the right to protest, and which is also necessary. It's a necessary part of a democratic country. So that's why it's mentioned here. Supreme Court also mentioned that the same must be respected and encouraged by the state, for the strength of democracy, such as ours, lies in the same. Then these rights are subject to reasonable restrictions, which also we have discussed with the meaning. So these rights are subject to reasonable restrictions, which inter alia pertain to the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of India and public order, and to the regulation by the concerned police authorities in this regard. This is the
Sir,
particular point. Yeah, yeah.
डाउट इंटर एलिया का मतलब क्या होता है?
So means these rights are subject to reasonable restrictions, which includes which in these are the restrictions. So these are the restrictions which include, and these are the restrictions mentioned. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Now, court um, quote stated for the right of protesters, quote stated that each fundamental right, be it of an individual or of a class, does not exist in isolation and has to be balanced with every other contrasting right. So, suppose one person has got the one fundamental right, and if while enjoying that fundamental right, he hampers the right of other person, right to enjoy fundamental right of other person, then his fundamental right is in contrast with the other person's fundamental right. So Supreme Court stated that each fundamental right, be it of an individual or of a class, does not exist in isolation and has to be balanced with every other contrasting right, because not only one person has got the fundamental right, each of us has got the fundamental right, and in our exercise of fundamental right we should also consider that others also have got the fundamental right. So while we exercise our own fundamental right, it should not create a problem for others to exercise their fundamental rights. But what's happening at Shaheen Bagh, people have got the right to protest and they are protesting, but they are hampering the right of commuters, because the right of commuters has the right to move freely at any road of Delhi. So you can't block road. If you have to protest, then you can protest, you have got the right to protest, but not by blocking roads and not by hampering the rights of other people. So Supreme Court said that it was in this respect that in this case, an attempt was made by us to reach a solution where the rights of protesters were to be balanced with that of commuters. Now, stating further, Supreme Court said that the ability to scale up quickly, it's about the technological aspect of the Shaheen Bagh. Supreme Court said that the ability to scale up quickly, for example, using digital infrastructure, has empowered movements to embrace their often leaderless aspirations and evade usual restrictions of censorship. However, the flip side to this is that the social media channels are often fraught with danger and can lead to the creation of highly polarized environments, which often see parallel conversations running with no constructive outcome evident. So, as we know now that at Shaheen Bagh, there were many groups who are protesting at the same place, and though each of the groups has the connection with their members by the means of technology. So that's why Supreme Court said that, however, the flip side to this is that the social media channels are often fraught with danger and can lead to the creation of highly polarized environment, which was there at Shaheen Bagh, which often see parallel conversation running with no constructive outcome evident. That's the condition at Shaheen Bagh, because every group has their own stake, has their own claims, has their own motives at the place of Shaheen Bagh. Now, the court said that both these scenarios were witnessed in Shaheen Bagh, which started out as a protest against the Citizenship Amendment Act, gained momentum across cities to become a movement of solidarity for the women and their cause, but came with its fair share of change, as has been opined by the interlocutors, and caused inconvenience to commuters. Okay, is it clear till now?
Sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So after that, court has these all which we have discussed. It's on the right of protesters. Whatever court has stated for on the right of protesters and on the right to protest. Then after that, court has also stated about the responsibility of law enforcement authorities. As we know that Supreme Court has appointed two persons as the interlocutors, because administration has failed drastically in controlling the situation, because they don't even want to control that situation. They haven't even tried to control the situation. So Supreme Court held that the courts adjudicate the legality of the actions. It's the duty of the courts to adjudicate the legality of the actions, but and are not meant to give shoulder to the administration to fire their guns from. In what manner the administration should act is their responsibility, and they should not hide behind the court orders or seek support therefrom for carrying out their administrative functions. The court noticed that in the present case, that's of Shaheen Bagh, unfortunately, despite a lapse of considerable period of time, there was neither any negotiations nor any actions by the administration, thus warranting our intervention. Then, then Supreme Court concluded whole of the thing by saying that we only hope that such a situation does not arise in the future, and protests are subject to the legal position as enunciated above, with some sympathy and dialogue, but are not permitted to get out of hand. But we have discussed what are the events in the Shaheen Bagh, and Shaheen Bagh protest has definitely gone out of the hand. Okay, so should we move further?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there are some other judgments also on the right to protest. Let's check those judgments also. So first is of Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan versus Union of India. And Supreme Court also mentioned this judgment, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan versus Union of India, while discussing Shaheen Bagh case. So in this judgment also, Supreme Court has held that right to hold demonstration should be balanced with right to commute. And again, Supreme Court has reiterated the same principle in the Shaheen Bagh, that is Amit Sahni case. Now, moving on to the second case. Second case is Ramlila Maidan incident versus Home Secretary, Union of India and others case, which is of 2012 case. So what happened in this case? In this case, in Ramlila Maidan, at Ramlila Maidan in Delhi, Baba Ramdev with some of his promoters and some of his people were protesting against the black money involved in the with the government people. So they are silently protesting because Ramlila Maidan is an empty space. There are no roads going on through. So they are not on the roads. They are in the Ramlila Maidan and they are protesting there silently and peacefully. But what happened? At night, suddenly government imposed section 144 and chased out the protesters from Ramlila Maidan. So after the protesters are chased out, protesters went to the doors of Supreme Court, and what Supreme Court said is very significant. Supreme Court said that citizens have a fundamental right to assembly and peaceful protest, which cannot be taken away by an arbitrary executive or legislative action. And from the facts, it's very clear that they are protesting peacefully, and the protesters are sleeping at night at that time when police chased them. So that this is an arbitrary executive action. So the citizens, so Supreme Court decided that citizens have a fundamental right to assembly and peaceful protest, which cannot be taken away by an arbitrary executive and legislative action. Okay, is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, so so there will be questions now, and yeah, so these are the questions. Solve it. You have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes and solve this question. Then we will discuss it.
So is it B?
So just mention your answer. We will check afterwards. Okay, just mention your answer in the chat box. Okay, so I think we should discuss the question now. As three of you have replied, yeah, yeah. So, so starting with the passage. The passage talks about right to freedom of speech and expression, then right to assemble peacefully without arms under Article 19(1) Clause B. Yeah, so let's start with the let's talk from starting. So the constitutional scheme comes with the right to protest and express dissent, but with an obligation towards certain duties. Okay, we have discussed this line. At Article 19, one of the cornerstone of the Constitution of India, confers upon its citizen two treasured rights. Okay, we have discussed the rights also. So these rights in cohesion enable every citizen to assemble peacefully and protest against the actions or inactions of the state. Okay, so these rights give the right to protest in cohesion. Then the same must be respected, encouraged by the state. We have discussed for the strength of democracy, such as our lies in the same. Then these rights are subject to reasonable restrictions, which includes pertain to the interest of sovereignty, integrity of India, public order, and to the regulation by the concerned police authorities in this regard. Then fundamental right of people as a whole cannot be subservient to the fundamental rights of an individual. Yeah, it's an important right, important line, that fundamental rights of people as a whole cannot be subservient to the fundamental rights of an individual. Means it's not below the fundamental right of an individual. The fundamental right of an individual is equally important as the fundamental right of a people, means fundamental rights of a group. It's not that they are in group there are four people, so their fundamental right is more important than a particular individual or a section of people. Okay, then right to strike is not unconstitutional and is recognized under fundamental right to form assembly and associations, which is subject to reasonable restrictions. Each fundamental right, be it of an individual or of a class, does not exist in isolation and has to be balanced with every other contrasting right. Okay, yeah. So coming on to the passage. Now, consequent to the order passed by Supreme Court, which indicates decrement in the reservation quota of SC/ST, okay, several members belonging to SC/ST community started agitating against the changes in Reservation Act. Okay, and their leaders called for protest. Okay, they assembled in huge numbers at different public places, including near railway tracks and highways, without arms and peaceably. Okay, peaceably then okay. Then one strong group, however, called for Bharat Bandh. Oh, that implied keeping all the public and commercial activities on hold until they get an assurance that the decision will be revised. Now, traders belonging to SC/ST community and other supporters observed that the Bandh observed the Bandh and coerced other. So this is important. See, coerced other. They forced others to observe a Bandh too. A citizen filed a petition declaring such ban as unconstitutional, considering the fact that it affected trade and commerce of people at large. So now come to the options. Whatever you have given, C, B, B, is C after suggestion. Yeah, we will check it. So two types of option we have got, C and B from you guys. Okay. So coming to the first option. First option states that their way of protesting is constitutional because they have already suffered due to Supreme Court's decision, Supreme Court's action. So there is no role between it because nothing mentions here. Already suffered. So if you have suffered, then you can protest, but the protest must be peaceful. And there's nothing mentioned here about peaceful and about other things. So this option is wrong. Now coming to the B option, which you have suggested, then B option suggests that the way of is constitutional. Okay. At first part, in the first three lines, they were protest peacefully because they assembled in huge numbers at different public places, including near railway tracks and highways without arms and peaceably. But what happened after that? One strong group came and called for Bharat Bandh. That's also important. We are talking about the whole passage, whole question. We can't decide our answer from the first three lines that mm, they are protesting peacefully. Then what happened? Let's check what happened. They called for Bharat Bandh that implied keeping all the public and commercial activities on hold until they get an assurance that the decision will be revised. Traders belonging to SC/ST community and other supporters observed the Bandh, but they also coerced others. Where they starting coercing others, where they starting forcing others, At that time, do you think that the protest has been peaceful? Means every person in India has the right to freely practice their trade and commerce. It's their fundamental rights, and you are coercing, you are forcing other people who has got the fundamental rights. You are forcing them to hold a band. If they want to have their business, then why can't they have? Why they have to support your group? Why they have to support your group in to why they have to support your group in your protest, in your cause? They have their fundamental rights, you have your fundamental rights. If you want to hold a band, then you can, and your supporters can. So the traders belonging to SC/ST community and other supporters observed the band, that's okay. But from the point when they started coercing others to observe the band, that's unconstitutional, because it's in contrast to others' right. It's hampering the right to trade of other people who don't want to observe the band. So that's why B option is wrong, because it's only dealing with the first three lines when the protest was peaceful. Coming to the option C, uh, many of you have suggested option C also. And there's one question that whether option C is a suggestion. Okay, so coming on to option C. Option C states that the protest is unconstitutional because they were assembling near railway tracks and highways. No. So the first question is that first answer is that the option is not suggestion, because option is not saying the protest should be continued because they are fighting for a great cause. If this has been the option, then the option has been a suggestion. But the option is very clear cut and is stating that the protest is unconstitutional because they were assembling near railway tracks and highways. But it's also mentioned that they were assembling near railway tracks and highways without arms and peaceably. Till it's without arms and peaceably, it's no problem. Then coming to the D part, D option states, so C option is wrong because they were assembling peacefully and without arms at near railway tracks and highways. So C option is wrong. Coming to the D option is the last option, so it must be the right one. So D option states that the call for Bandh was not constitutional because it affected trade and commerce at large. And that's the right one, because if you are coercing
So
others
we
to
can't
observe the
see
ban,
D
you are
option.
forcing others, and simply if you are forcing others, that the option. Okay, okay, yeah, I have just okay. Let me check. Yeah, so there may be a problem. I will tell you what the D option is. I think it should not be an issue in the next slides. So I will tell you. I'm going to tell you the D option. Just mention D option anywhere. If you want to write, you can write. Okay. So the D option states that the constitutional because it affected trade and commerce at large. Yeah. So this is the D option. Yeah, I have typed it. So this is the D option, and D option is the right one because the call for Bandh was not constitutional because it affected trade and commerce at large. So you have, I think you all have made mistakes because the option was not visible. There may be some error in the PPT. Next time I will check it. Okay, is it clear now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So moving on to next question. Yeah. So this is the next question. Try doing it in 2-3 minutes and then we will solve it. Is the D option visible in third question, second question?
So the second question is not visible. It's still the first question for me at least.
Yeah, you'll have to. The slide is still showing question one.
The network issue. Yeah, I think there's some network issue. I'm checking it. Wait.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's visible.
1 second, 1 second. Let it be visible. It will change. But
It's changed for
yeah,
me. I can see question two.
yeah,
Alice?
it's question two. Yeah, it's question two. So take 2-3 minutes, solve it, and then we will solve it together.
Yash, it's moved back to the previous slide. Yeah, okay, thanks.
Yeah. So I think we should start discussing this question also. So the passage is same, and then the yeah. Going on to the question. Uh, Sanjay was going to watch a controversial film Pac-Man with his family, for which there have been protests all over the country before the release. Okay. He reached the theater just in time before the show, but saw some fringe elements vandalizing the theater and stopping people from entering the same. He was determined to fight for his right and watch the show, so he stood his ground and tried to cut through the crowd, but was stopped and pushed several times. Then finally was unable to watch the show, but he filed a petition in Supreme Court that his fundamental rights have been violated because the protests going on and the protests are unconstitutional. Finally, he was unable to watch the show. Yeah, and that's why he filed a petition and thinks that the protests are unconstitutional. No, you have all have mentioned answer as C option. Okay, we will check the all of the options. So option A is people have the right to protest, and this is constitutional. Yeah, we all know that people have the right to protest, and this is thus it is constitutional. But what the protesters were doing, protesters stopped Sanjay from entering the theater, and he has the right. Sanjay also has the right, and we shouldn't forget that with the people, Sanjay also has the right. And it's clearly mentioned in the principle that fundamental rights of people as a whole cannot be subservient to the fundamental rights of an individual or a section of people. So it's not that the people, the right of people should be given more importance than Sanjay's right. So option is wrong. Moving on to option B. Option B suggests that states that people have the right to protest and they are protesting outside the theater. Hence, the protest is continually constitutionally valid. Okay, so there are many private places, but you just can't create chaos at any private place because it's all in India, and you can't because others' right is going to hamper if one person is owner of the private entity, then his right is going to be affected. Then you can't create, then a group of people can't create chaos at any private entity. So this option is wrong. Coming on to option C. Option C states that the protest is unconstitutional as it's violating fundamental rights of Sanjay. Yeah, that's we were searching for in the option, and that's the option now. Because it's unconstitutional, as we have discussed that the fundamental rights of a people as a whole
cannot be subservient to the fundamental rights of an individual or a section of people. So the protest is unconstitutional and it's violating fundamental rights of Sanjay. So option C must be the right answer, but let's check option D also. Option D states that the protest is unconstitutional. Theater is also a government property. Okay, we don't need whether theater is a government property or not, whether it's a private property or a government property. At any place the protest becomes violent or protest is not placed in India, then it will hamper the fundamental rights of other people and then it will be unconstitutional. So option D is wrong. So we have left with only one option, option C, and the protest is as it's violating fundamental rights of Sanjay is the correct option. Okay, is there any doubt or should we move further?
No doubt, sir.
One second, network issue will again. Okay, so moving to the third question. Yeah. Visible to you guys? Okay, so let's start discussing this question also. Yeah, passage is same and the question is different. So the question states that the constitutionality of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code is being hotly debated as it criminalizes consensual sexual intercourse between two homosexuals, thus making homosexuality illegal in India. Then gay rights activists are organizing rallies to gather public support to compel the state to pass a law decriminalizing homosexuality in India. Okay. Then the government, however, is not keen on drafting such a law. Afraid that the protests may uproar and chaos, the state passes an order prohibiting the citizens from participating in such a rally. Restriction or not? So let's check each and every option. Option A states that this law is a reasonable restriction, which is being put by the states to maintain law and order in the society. But it doesn't seem to be a reasonable restriction because the protest, there's no way mentioned in the passage, in the question, that the protest will lead to public uproar and chaos. It's only in the mind of government, and they're only stating this as a reason that the protest may lead to public uproar and chaos. So the state has passed an order. No, this is wrong option because of this, the reason I have given. Now coming to the option B. Option B states that this law is an unreasonable restriction because you are stopping them to protest, which is their fundamental right. So this this seems to be a right answer because everybody has the right to protest, and the homosexuals also have the right to protest. Each and every citizen of India has the right to protest, and you can't just stop them from protesting until and unless the protest becomes uh, violent. Or coming to the C option. C option is this law is an unreasonable restriction because it allows the state to regulate the behavior in society. This is wrong option because there's nowhere in the principle mentioned about the behavior in society. We are only talking about legality of an act, legality of the protest, and the peaceful, whether the protest is peaceful or not. It doesn't matter whether the state has to regulate the behavior in the society or not. So this is wrong option. Totally out of the topic option. So coming to the D option. The option states that the state is free to impose restriction as it pleases on the fundamental rights of the citizen. So no, it's not on the discretion of state to impose any restriction which the state wants. The state can only impose the reasonable restrictions, and we have read what kind of restrictions the state has imposed. And if there is reasonableness, then only state can impose that restriction. So option D is also wrong. So only option B is right, and that's the right answer. Okay. So moving on to the last part of the PPT, which is answers and reasoning. You can check the answers with the reasons. If you have any problem, then we can discuss it. Let's check the options and answers, then we can leave the meeting.
Um,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll end the meeting now.